Welcome back to the show as America observes Martin Luther King Day and counts down the hours to a historic new presidency. We're looking at the state of race relations in the country today with William and Janet Langhart-Cohen, a remarkable couple here in the corridors of power in Washington who have literally broken down the traditional walls in politics and society. Last year, the Cohens initiated and hosted the Race and Reconciliation America Conference in order to begin an open dialogue on racial, ethnic and religious prejudice. As we get back to our questions, let's get Anne on the line from Switzerland. Anne, what would you like to ask?
Hello,
Hi.
my name is Anne. I would like to ask whether you can define black, because I don't think Obama is black anymore. He's all about the people and the change in the world.
Okay, Secretary Cohen, first you.
Well, it does move away from the one-drop theory that has existed for so many centuries, that if you had one drop of black blood, then you necessarily were black. I think Obama is, what do we call it, blended?
Yes.
He's a blend now.
Well, he's biracial, I'm blend.
You're blended, he's
Actually,
biracial.
Secretary Cohen, you yourself, your son actually married an African-American as well.
Actually, my son is married to an African-American woman, and we have, he has three beautiful children, my grandchildren, and they are little Barack Obamas. They are the same
Adorable.
mixture.
Coming from Britain, for me it's a big surprise. It was a big surprise 16 years ago. I moved to Atlanta, of course, the Deep South too, to see how America was still divided when I compared it with other places such as Britain and parts of Europe. And I wonder, what is it that's allowed that kind of discrimination to remain so active for so long?
I think our history, I think our slave history, we were a slave nation before we were a nation. I think legalized segregation laws that legalized people to where they could sit, who they could marry. In our lifetime, Bill and I could have not gotten married.
Right.
The Supreme Court had to order it okay for us to marry in any state in the Union. Back in 1967, we were fully of an age of reason by the time that Supreme Court ruling came down. So I think color is a very discriminatory thing just by looking at it, that with laws, that with class and economy being the way it is, it keeps things down. And long ago, we blacks, we African Americans were the economy. And it's so ironic that we began as the economy of this great nation, and it's the economy that's tanking that has created a perfect storm for a black president.
Let's get on the line from Saudi Arabia, Mohammed. Mohammed, good to hear from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Go ahead.
Thanks, Riz, and hi to your distinguished guests. I'd like to ask Mr. Cohen in particular that we have the birth of all these nationalist movements in South America and the Middle East. And obviously to have sustainable peace, we must nurture these movements rather than stifle them as they've been doing since the Second World War. So what kind of strategy is Mr. Obama going to adopt to nurture these movements, because often it will run contrary to the interests of the lobby groups that we have in the United States? Thank you.
Well, it's interesting. Fareed Zakaria has written a book talking about the rise of the rest, namely that we're seeing other countries rise to a level of influence and power that we have not witnessed before. And that's a very interesting proposition, but it raises another issue that the caller perhaps touched upon. Namely, as you have many other countries who are assuming a greater and greater role on the international scene, what will be the organizing principle? How do you develop a consensus in dealing with multiple countries now in terms of having power? The United Nations has not been able to really operate in an efficient way. And if you don't have efficiency and legality, then you have this world in which each country is rising, saying we are a strong nation, but how do you reach agreement? So I think the United States is going to play a much more, productive, active, engaging role in world affairs, understanding that every country wants to be proud of its country, the people, and that we have to look at the world in ways that allow people to achieve their highest potential, and that means engaging them. So I think you'll see a policy of active engagement and trying to understand how people experience their history, their culture, their lives, what lens they look through life through, and to be sensitive to that. I think he will.
For a lot of people, the U.S. is kind of a bit of a contradiction, though. I'd mentioned, Janet, earlier about moving to Atlanta and seeing, witnessing a very different level of segregation, from what I'd witnessed as a child in other countries. And I wonder, the issue of political correctness is something I came across here in the U.S. Does it help or hinder?
Well, it does both. The political correctness gives you a guide to behave and speak properly so you don't offend other people, but it also hinders because then you don't have that complete dialogue. And that's one of the things we wanted to do last summer with our Race and Reconciliation in America conference, was to not just have blacks or people of color talking to each other, singing to the choir, talking about what history has done to us, but to enable white Americans to come to the table, other Americans to come to the table and talk about their grievances and not worry about being politically correct.
But then you have the rappers.
The rappers, of course. Well, they're the young kids. That's a young culture, the music coming in. And we've lived long enough to see music evolve from the days of B.B. King into, who is it, Elvis and the Beatles and
No, I was thinking more of the
Marvin
kind of
Gaye.
language and the, you know, the ownership of the N-word, as one rapper said to me.
I have problems with that.
Secretary Cohen, also the issue of affirmative action in America. I mean, it's something obviously put into to address an imbalance. And I wonder, again, at what point it can become counterproductive?
I don't think we're at that point yet. I mean, the notion that you could have people enslaved for 300 years and then say you have 30 years of affirmative action, saying let's try and at least give people who are eager and talented and want to have a chance to enjoy the American dream, let's focus on them if we can. 30 years of affirmative action against 300 years of slavery, and we say, well, time's up. We're all equal now. I don't think so. I think that over a period of time, obviously, this will no longer be necessary. But for the moment, I think we have to look at groups who have been historically discriminated against and say they need to have a little additional assistance, and we have that obligation to provide it.
We have also, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry,
please.
I was just thinking of one of your callers, one of your women callers who said, Barack Obama isn't black, why should he have to be called black? And I keep thinking, what's wrong with being black? Would she prefer he be called white?
I think her reference was more that, you know, should he have to be labelled? And I wonder when people say, is he black enough? That's another comment that comes up. Does he connect?
That's an issue. That's a judgment, I think, being made on his ideology and wanting him to reflect their ideology.
Okay.
But
well, can he connect? I mean, with his background?
absolutely, he can connect more than anybody. We need people who can reconcile. We need people who can come together and recognize our commonalities. And certainly, someone who is biracial, who is self-identified as black, and has lived in a predominantly white world growing up, he certainly can. He's lived in Asia. I think he can connect.
And Secretary Cohen, of course, you know, like, as with Janet, you travel the world a lot, and there's a question that came in from our live station chat room, which is going strong now as we go out live. Anish from Germany says, do you think Obama can be an inspiration to black people living in Europe who want to pursue their dreams?
I think he can be an inspiration to people, white or black, all over the world. I travel the world. I was in South Korea just shortly before the election, and a Korean minister said to me, he said, you know, if Barack Obama gets elected, it'll be he used these words, the ratification of the American dream. And I asked him, why do you say that? He said, because if a first generation African American can be elected President of the United States, anything is possible. And I said, that's not just the American dream, that's every person's dream. It may only be possible in America, but I think what I have seen around the world is people, white, black, brown, Asian, Latino, they want America to be the America, as Langston Hughes said, the dream it was supposed to be, the dream of equality and justice, and what Obama was talking about just a few moments ago on the air about achieving equality and justice and compassion for all Americans. Well, that message is for the rest of the world too.
I'm sorry.
No, well, actually, go ahead, please. I'd like your thought.
Well, I was just thinking that, you know, people have said to me, my white friends have said to me, oh, black people are walking a whole lot taller now that you have a black president. And I'm saying to myself, and to them, white people should walk taller. Right, he could not have made it without them. And America has traveled the greatest distance.
Also, a thought, Secretary Cohen, that you know, obviously you experienced being, in terms of crossing barriers, also being a Republican Secretary of Defense in a Democratic, administration. Barack Obama seems to be also reaching out and crossing those barriers as well. A good sign, I would guess.
Excellent sign. I think he has to do this. The notion that he could just pursue his policies with just Democratic support, I think, would be a mistake. What you need is bipartisan support. He's taking a big page, an entire book from Abraham Lincoln in terms of team of rivals. And putting a couple of Republicans in key positions will send the signal, yes, there'll be differences, but on the key issues, whether it's economy, education, the environment, energy, these issues, foreign policies, we should be one.
Sounds like America might be following the example of you, both of you, in crossing barriers. Thank you very much for being with us.
We're way out of time.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to have you both here.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Tuesday's Inauguration Day, and Al Jazeera will be providing special coverage of the events. I'll be listening in for your thoughts and feedback on the Obama presidency and sharing them with you all day. So do send in your questions and comments. But for me and the team, we'll see you next time.